afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Firestein, Director of Richmond Public Library, and welcome to 2025 Read Up Richmond. Yay! This is our library's celebration of books and ideas, a cornerstone of our mission, which is to inform, enrich, and empower. Each year, we gather to engage with literature that challenges us to think critically, reflect deeply, and connect meaningfully with one another. This year, we're privileged to have Kevin Nguyen of Me Documents. Mr. Nguyen is a celebrated author, editor, known for his incisive, witty, and deeply resonant writing. He has held editorial roles at GQ, The Verge, Google Play Books. His debut novel, New Waves, received widespread acclaim for its exploration of friendship, grief, technology, and race. His second novel, Me Documents, the 2025 Read Up Richmond selection, is a compelling work informed by real-life events from Japanese incarceration and the Vietnam War to modern-day immigration detention. Beautifully written, it explores a reality close to our own, sensitive to both the harshness and the persistence of racism. The novel balances humor and tenderness with unsettling truths, offering a powerful portrayal of ambition, fear, and family in America. Leading this afternoon's discussion is Emma Ito, Director of Education with Virginia Humanities, where she develops educational programs for K-12 students, college students, educators, and lifelong learners. Previously, Ms. Ito served as an education and program specialist with the Library of Virginia, where she led efforts to promote research and promote Asian American history. Ms. Ito has also taught as an adjunct professor at Virginia Commonwealth University, holds a bachelor's and a master's degree in history, and wrote her master's thesis on the experiences of Japanese immigrants and Japanese Americans in Virginia during the Jim Crow era and World War II. Outside of her work, she is an avid reader and active bookstagrammer. I look forward to their conversation, and there will be an opportunity for questions from the audience after their discussion. On behalf of Richmond Public Library, I would also like to express sincere gratitude to the Richmond Public Library Foundation and the Friends of the Richmond Public Library. Without our dedicated staff and without their help to make this program would not be possible. And to all of you for showing up on a beautiful Sunday afternoon as we come together to learn, listen, and connect through literature. Please join me in warmly welcoming Kevin Nguyen and Emma Ito.
How's that?
Thing with Kevin before we started this, when we were doing the practice walk up, and it feels like graduation or something. Like, we're here. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm so excited to just chat with you.
Yeah, we're gonna hang out.
Yeah. We had a nice time catching up a little bit before this, so hopefully I'm repeating questions, but we have a lot to talk about, I think, today. Did you want to start with a short reading?
Yeah,
or?
That sounds good. I'm just going to read a brief section of the book. Thanks all for coming. Someone at the airport asked if I was in town for the marathon. And I was just like, thank you for thinking that I can run 26 miles.
I mean,
it's very flattering.
You could argue this is a marathon of a type, kind of.
Sure.
It's not wrong.
Cool. Trying to think what setup this needs. So the concept of the book is that this thing happens, and then the U.S. government decides to put all Vietnamese Americans in internment camps. And so this is about a character who decides not to go, basically, yeah. Living in the suburbs meant it always felt like things were happening somewhere else. That was precisely what Dan liked about them. In a city, you might run into someone you know. They'd call it serendipity. What are the odds of running into you here? Said with such astonishment, like it was the best possible thing that could happen in a day. In the suburbs, you did run into your neighbors, but just the same handful of people. People, most importantly, who did not really know Dan. They knew his wife, Celeste, his kids, Justin and Jesse, maybe a little about his job, insurance. Here, these things defined you. Dan was happy to let that be. He was ashamed of what actually defined him, all the people he'd fled or abandoned. So, at Safeway, seeing the neighbors with the yellowish house at the end of the cul-de-sac, it was just, how's the wife, the kids, the job? And then a promise to get together soon before Dan was back to fondling avocados for ripeness. Dan felt safest in his car, a handsome but monstrous Toyota Land Cruiser from the early 90s that he picked up on the cheap at a police auction. He was self-aware enough to realize that his comfort in it came from his history of leaving a place and people and responsibilities, and that this big gas hog of a car had enabled that. But he promised himself that it wouldn't happen again. He was just driving around the suburbs, circling from one strip mall to the next, indulging in an endless list of chores that was mundane and also kept Dan grounded. This time, he wasn't going anywhere. Dan's documents, his birth certificate, social security card, those things, were kept in an old trapper keeper in the trunk, usually under beat up sporting equipment that his kids used when they went to the park or the beach. At times, Dan was worried what might happen if the kids uncovered the folder. They would be too young to know what to even make of it, but they might show it to Celeste, who had no idea about Dan's previous lives. Maybe there's a part of Dan that wanted to be discovered. He'd been raised in a family that could best be described as shame and guilt-based. It was probably what made it so easy to fit into his new life. Christians love shame and guilt. When he met Celeste, it had been so easy to convince her friends, her family, that he was just a lifelong Christian. Feel bad about yourself and claim Jesus? The church recognizes you as one of their own. Sometimes Dan had nightmares about Celeste finding the documents and confronting them. She'd be furious, of course, and rightfully so. He imagined the ensuing blowout. He could see everything that Celeste would say, the disappointment, the look of betrayal. Would Dan fess up, try to do everything in his power to make things right with family? Or would he bolt, again? But as the years went by, weekends of errands, trawling around the suburbs in his gigantic car, it put him at ease. And so for many years, Dan's real identity was just left beneath a boogie board or a baseball bag in the back of his Land Cruiser, waiting to be uncovered. When the American Advanced Protections Initiative passed, Dan was unstressed, even though all signs pointed to the government coming for his exact demographic: Vietnamese, male, middle-aged. But Dan was prepared. Running away wasn't about remembering what to bring, but knowing what you'd leave behind. Each time Dan left a place, he learned to take less with him. He was only 4 years old when his family fled Saigon. He was too young to make any decisions then, but his mother tried to take as much as possible: clothes, books, old photos, family heirlooms, anything they could fit on the boat. Really, instead, they should have brought as much drinking water as possible, since they nearly died of dehydration at sea. When they beached at a refugee camp in Indonesia, they would lose all their possessions, the meaningful ones anyway. The camp consisted of long, unremarkable huts and an under-resourced medical center. There was enough to eat, but it was only the most basic forms of sustenance: some rice, maybe a little bit of fruit if they were lucky. Dan's mother believed that their time in the refugee camp would be short, and even as the months passed, she remained confident that those days would end. Young Dan felt like he would be in the camp for the rest of his life. But his older brother, who'd managed to settle in the US, was able to secure a sponsorship application. Dan's mother thanked Buddha, though it was a family of Catholics who would eventually take them in once they reached California. He knew his story was not special. A lot of people arrived in the US, fucked up by the war, imprisonment, refugee camps, re-education camps, whatever. For a lot of immigrants, this manifested as anger. As for Dan, he nurtured a cool acceptance that everything could evaporate overnight, and if it did, he could just move on. Survival was just figuring out the next day. When you can only imagine life a day at a time, it's always money you need, never wealth. Decisions are made in the immediate term. After all, you only worry about the consequences if you're thinking ahead. So when Dan, watching cable news, saw that AAPI was a done deal, he didn't bother to say goodbye to Celeste or peek into the bedroom where Jesse and Justin were sleeping. No final glimpses. Instead, Dan just walked straight to his Land Cruiser in the garage. He checked the trunk and took stock of the belongings. The trapper keeper was still there, buried under a pile of beach toys from an outing months ago. Now he had the patience to unpack, putting the folding chairs in the cooler, the big umbrella in their proper spot on a metal shelf he had built 2 summers ago, swapping them for camping gear that he and Celeste used more frequently before they had the twins: a sleeping bag, the tent, an extra wool blanket, a small stove. Dan turned off his phone, knowing it could be tracked, and dropped it inside the cooler. Last, he removed the pair of car seats that belonged to Justin and Jesse and placed them on the floor of the garage. As Dan pulled out of the driveway, his head turned around so he could see through the back windshield. His eyes grazed the empty space the car seats had left. Under them had remained a layer of assorted crumbs and dust in the shapes of where his son and daughter had been just hours earlier. He could clean the seats off later, maybe with one of those free gas station vacuums, once he was further down the road. Dan felt the faintest touch of guilt, not about leaving, but the recognition of how easy it was, and how each time it only got easier. Thanks.
Wow, thanks. I feel like I have so many questions just from that part alone. I'm just curious, how many people have already read the book? Wow, a ton of
holy
people.
shit.
This is great. Okay, so
I
I
could have
will.
read something later then.
Yeah, I'm not
not
even
worried
going to
about
ask that many
spoilers anymore.
questions. Yeah, I feel like you guys will have really good ones. But if you have read the book, for those of you who haven't, the characters are just so well written. I feel like I know them. Like, I'm so book hungover now. Like, what do I do? And so for those of you who haven't read the book, we have 4 main characters who are all the children of the father that you just
Dan.
read about, Dan. So how did you write the characters? Like, were any of them informed by people you know, or like family members, and even thinking of like Dan, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. You know, it's funny. I have a bunch of cousins who live in New York, so I see them a lot. They're a bit younger than me, and they're just like all convinced that the characters are based on them. And I just want to be like, they're not.
Have you had like a family reunion yet? Like, you're all together and they're like, wait a minute, Kevin.
Yeah. They're all, no, I think the way I wanted the characters to be, and I kind of did this in my first book, like, I kind of like imagine like myself in these scenarios I throw at the characters, and then I'm just like, what if I made the wrong decision at every turn?
Ooh.
So I think that's like, yeah, that's sort of how I construct it. But yeah, there's kind of this like, it is kind of a plotty book, but I kind of like wanted a book where the real dramatic tension is actually between the characters.
Yeah.
You know, like I actually don't think the most dramatic thing narratively in the book is even the scenario that brings them to camp. It's like their relationships to each other. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I want to like probe a little further in that, because we have a character who's a journalist. Well, we really have 2 women characters that are essentially journalists. We have Ursula and Jen, and then we have the tech worker Alvin, and we have Duncan, who's a high school student. So like, just diving into that, like, what about your background? Like, what of your past work has informed some of these characters?
yeah, that's fair. I work as a journalist, and so a lot of that informed Ursula's behavior. You know, sort of like I was saying, it's just like, what if I was deeply unethical at my job? Like,
In your 20s?
put that in the book. And then, yeah, before I was a journalist, I worked at big tech companies in pretty like low-level jobs. I wasn't a software engineer like Alvin, but yeah, those environments are very strange. I think they're like emotionally stunting environments. So yeah, I think, so there's definitely like things that informed the scenarios that they're in from my life, yeah.
I love that you really did nail that like 20-year-old vibe of when you're not sure what you're doing and you make decisions like on the fly sometimes, and that felt very real. But one of the things I loved is the situations that they're in sometimes that are very humorous. And so like, how did you balance this really kind of dark setting, like you said, with finding humor and like finding joy and like finding those moments?
Yeah, I think partly it's a personal preference in this sense that I just like art that has a sense of humor. I don't like things that are overly serious. But also like when I was conceiving of the book, and I imagine this scenario, which is, you know, like I think the blunt way I was thinking about it was like, what would it look like if Japanese American incarceration happened again? You know, like a little less than 100 years later, what would that look like? And I just imagine like, what would young people think about it? And they just like, they'd be in camp and they'd have this like existential dread hanging over them every day. But then they would also be really annoyed that they couldn't look at TikTok.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Or like find that actor that was in that movie.
Yeah,
or something.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think I liked that gap. Like there's like a big dramatic thing happening, but at the same time, and I think this is just like how humans are and how we survive, like we're just kind of like possessed by our like day-to-day mundanities and our like little petty lives. And I thought like that gap would be a really interesting place for the book to live.
It's interesting hearing you say about like the day-to-day lives too, because I feel like you really see that in their experiences in the camp too. One thing I really appreciated is even the notice of like, you talked about like the weather and like the dust, but like what did they do about it and how they move on? And that was something that really happened at the Japanese American incarceration camps. So I'm just curious, like, you did a lot of research for this book, right? Like what kind of things were you looking at as you were making that comparison?
It's interesting because I had just read a lot of books about JA incarceration. And there's like a lot of great literature out there. I do feel like in this weird way though, it's like misrepresented, you know, because a lot of the writing about it is just like everyone in camp was so sad, which is true, but like they were still like, they're people, you know, like they were telling jokes, they were making poetry and cooking, and they had baseball leagues. Like there was still like a resilient thing that I feel like people don't talk about.
Yeah, they were still getting through their day to day.
Yeah, and I think that's like the most amazing thing about like humans. Like we're extremely adaptable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it also just like maybe played into this stereotype that like Japanese people are just like stoic and poetic and, you know. So I kind of wanted to subvert that a little bit. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was telling Kevin before this that I had watched a few different interviews to like prep for this, and one thing that a lot of people do is call this a speculative fiction or dystopic fiction. So I wanted to ask you, like, what genre would you say this fits in? Because there is so many things that's like one little change and this could be real, right?
It's funny. When I was writing it, I wasn't thinking about genre at all. Like I'm just like, it's a work of literary fiction, and maybe there's like a conceit that feels dystopian or speculative. I do think genre labels are helpful, you know, but I just like I was never like, this is a work of speculative fiction. Because even though like, maybe what the book imagines, well, at the time I was like, this will be a little far off in the future. We're obviously living it now. Unfortunately. But yeah, I was just thinking, I don't know, I really actually at the core of it wanted it to be a family story. Like I wanted the characters to be the thing. So it's like, it's really more about a family surviving through the thing and muddling through it than it is the thing itself, if that makes sense. And I think speculative fiction and science fiction, it's usually about the thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's less about the characters. So.
Well, and that's something I find really powerful that your writing does is, like, even thinking about the excerpt you just read from Dan, it's like that's the way he's dealing with trauma, right? It's like, how are these characters moving forward in their lives? How do they deal with trauma? And like, did you want to talk about how that was writing or diving into that?
Well, you know, it's funny. I think a lot of the book thematically is like, how curious are we about our history? You know, I think generally we are not curious enough.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me, it's like, you know, I feel like the four characters in the book, like they're sort of forced to become curious when confronted by it. But, you know, like, is it their fault that they didn't really learn about their history? Like, what happens when your parents are like traumatized and don't want to talk about it?
Yeah.
And what happens when their grandparents are, you know, like, so I don't think there's like a clean takeaway, but it's sort of just like, this is what happens when we don't ask.
So how did you learn about this history?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. My family has like really opened up in like the past 5 years, which is very strange. But my grandmother, she wrote this like, she died of cancer, but so while she was sick, she just like wrote out her whole life story from like nose to tail. And it's funny because it just reads like, it's like not emotional at all. It just like reads like a long Wikipedia article, you know, just like, and then this happened, and then like there was no food, and I was just like, I would be so much more dramatic if I was hungry.
Oh my God.
But yeah, she just wrote this like document, and I don't know. Once she wrote that, like the aunts and uncles started telling these stories that I'd never heard.
Wow.
And, yeah, it's just so funny because my family is extremely loud. Like they're just always telling jokes, and but I was like, there's like a whole dimension of interesting things that had never been unlocked before.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of that.
How old were you when she did that?
This was only like 5-6 years ago.
Wow.
So I was in that was my early 30s, you know.
Wow. I feel like that's such an important thing though, right? It's like so many of us don't start to really look at our histories until then, or like realize that we didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah, I also think there's like a baseline of history we should know. Like, I'll say my cousins, like, they don't know what year the fall of Saigon was. They should know it's 1975.
It's
like
a big
nice
year this
round
year,
number.
right? Yeah, 50
But
years.
they just, I don't know, and want them to be a little more curious.
Yeah. I want to also ask a little bit about process, because this isn't your first book. I mean, shout out to New Waves 2020,
Yeah.
right?
March 2020, a great time for everyone.
I can't believe you had the right headspace to be able to write a book. That's amazing. But what was the process like for this one? Was it different than your first book? Was it more pressure? Was it less pressure?
You know, it was more pressure. So when I wrote my first book, I was like, maybe no one will want this, you know, but like I will prove to myself that I can like write 100,000 words.
Yeah.
And I was lucky, you know, like some publishers wanted it, you know, it was quite competitive. That was cool. And then I realized like working on a second book, like, oh, it'd be so embarrassing if I couldn't do this again.
Oh my God.
So that was like the pressure I was applying to myself. But I also just wanted to do something that was more difficult.
Yeah.
The balancing the point of view characters was hard. A lot of the research I had to do was kind of intense. And yeah, it's funny too. This is really specific, but like the first book I wrote in the mornings before work.
Wow.
And people are like, "Oh, you must like wake up so early." I was working at GQ at the time. Like no one rolled in the office until like 10:30, so I just like wake up at 8, write for an hour, and get ready for work.
Nice.
Like, pretty normal hours. And then for this one, I couldn't write in the morning for some reason, so I was just like writing really late at night, like from like 2 to 3 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was real grad school vibes
Yeah,
there.
right.
So what kind of books were you looking at when you did this research? Because I know you did a shout out to like Desert Exile.
Desert Exile,
Yeah.
I love. I was reading a lot about both camps and the Vietnam War. There's actually a really great book about the Vietnam War called Bring the War Home, and it just draws like a direct line between the end of the Vietnam War and like the rise of white supremacy. And it's really, the writing in it is fantastic too. I almost recommend that. But I'm trying to think what other JA books, you know, No Boy.
Yeah. Or were there like other media things that influenced you? Like were there movies or shows or video game? Like I love, if you haven't read it yet, there's like one part where there's someone in the camp who makes a text video game.
Yeah, it's like a twine game.
Yeah, I loved that. So like, were there any other media influences as you were writing it too? Like not just history, and not just memoirs, but.
Yeah, I think actually the book structurally that informed me a lot earlier, even though I kind of abandoned it, was The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. It's just like, it's just vignettes of a place, you know? And so even though this is not a work of science fiction, originally it had a lot more stuff about just like how the camps operated, and there were like many more characters, and there was a lot less plot, I would say. So I changed that stuff a lot, but it helped me imagine the logic of the camp, which was really useful. The book used to be like twice as long as it is.
This book?
Yeah, like I remember
Twice as long?
Yeah, I think I wrote like 150,000 words, and I think what you have read is closer to 80.
Wow, those 3 to 4 a.m. writing sessions were really working.
I'm just, it's like, people are like, oh, like, what did you cut out? Like, what's on the cutting room? I was like, not good stuff, you know, like,
Oh my
it's shorter
gosh.
for a reason.
Yeah.
But, like, it just built out the world a lot more, and there was a lot more about the motives of the domestic terrorists, things like that. And I just realized the more you build out the world, the less it becomes a family story. So
Yeah, and I definitely feel the like character-driven piece of it too. So, kind of going along those lines of thinking about the characters, and thinking about the day-to-day, one of the things I loved is these pieces of resistance, of like little pieces of resistance and then like big pieces of resistance. So like, how did you think of that? Like, were there inspirations for that, or were you just thinking like, again, that day-to-day piece? Or
a little bit of it was inspired by like real stuff that happened in JA camps. Like there weren't like so much like underground newspapers, but there was a newspaper, you know, at each camp. And I don't know, I think it's like, I think again, it's like very much in human nature to resist, you know? And then like that can just take many small forms. Yeah, so I think that's sort of broadly what I was thinking about. But
Yeah. So what's it been like talking about this? I'm just curious because I know you're near it. This has been out since April,
Yeah.
right? Like, what has it been like talking about this in different areas? Like, have people asked you about different aspects of the book, like in thinking about today and thinking about contemporary connections? Like, you wrote this a while ago, and like here we are today. So
yeah, I get a lot of these like kind of sideways compliments as like, oh, you like predicted what's happening. And I was like, well, that was never the plan. When I started writing this, I was just like, okay, I want it to be grounded in reality, but like I want to like heighten it a little bit. And maybe in hindsight, I wish I had heightened it a little bit more. But you know, like when I started writing this in 2018, we're in the middle of like the first Trump presidency. And like a lot of the stuff that's happening now, like it was in the water then. You know,
Yeah.
it's like ICE did not materialize this year. Like
Yeah.
it has been with the Department of Homeland Security since its inception. Evoking the Alien Enemies Act, like Trump did that his first term. I
Yeah.
think maybe even when he's just campaigning too.
Yeah.
So yeah, in some ways, like I just imagined like these things that were real, what if they were like truly exploited, you know? And that's actually what we're seeing now, right? Like, yeah.
So what would you want people to walk away with? Like, what do you want people to think about when they read this?
That's a good question. I actually don't think so. I like work as a journalist, and I think the work of journalism is to like take things that are like messy and complicated and try to clarify it for the reader.
Yeah.
I actually think the work of fiction is sort of inverted. I like that it takes assumptions, things you take for granted, and then just like muddies it up. So I think if you like come to the book looking for answers to something, I think you'll walk away with like more questions. But I just feel like we live in a world like people should just be asking more questions
Ooh,
like all
yeah.
the time. So
But I want you to answer all the questions. Because you don't know the answer to all of this? Come on. No. So it's interesting, like I mentioned this to you earlier, like you are a journalist, and I feel like there's so many, like we're like half brother, half sisters as journalists and historians. Like you are the first line of those documents that are analyzed later. And so like, do you feel like being a journalist changed the way that you think about writing too? Because like as a historian, like oftentimes we read about the people, but it's not by the person. And so like I think there's this complicated question even with Ursula and Jen is when do you get to tell a story and literally profit off of it?
Yeah.
Like like talk about that a little bit.
yeah, it's funny. I don't know why anyone talks to a journalist, and I'm glad they do.
Okay, I'm gonna
like,
stop
we'd
talking
be
to
in
you
trouble.
now.
But like, the person that benefits in that interaction the most is always the journalist. Like, especially with a lot of reporting, labor reporting, it's like people put their ass on the line to just like say their piece.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that happens, but the journalist doesn't assume the same risk, you know? And I like very earnestly believe in the work of a free press, you know?
Yeah.
At the same time, it's just crazy to me that it even works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I've seen this in my industry where, you know, journalism is seen as like a moral and just thing. And I think sometimes when you're in those scenarios, people justify it. They justify their power-seeking behavior because they're like, I'm doing a good thing. And I don't think they recognize the ways in which they hold power over people. So
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to that.
yeah.
So
I think journalists are more problematic than historians.
if only. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm just curious then, like, where do you sit on like who gets to tell a story, right? Like, so Ursula is our character that is not actually in the camps. She's half Vietnamese, and she's talking to Jen, who is in the camps, and literally profits in all these ways. So like, you know, at the very end, it kind of comes to a head, and I won't give spoilers, but like, where do you sit on that? Like, who does get to tell this story? Is she allowed to tell that story or not?
Yeah, I don't know if I wanted the book to like come out with an answer where like this thing is good or this thing is bad,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just like want it to be complicated and sophisticated and just like make you question like I think almost like more loudly ask like whose right is it to tell the story, who
Yeah.
profits. So I think that's like kind of the place where the book ends in a way.
Yeah, there was like, I have too many markers, so I can't find it. But there was this quote that you talked about, like, are you honoring someone's legacy if they don't want you to tell it or something? Which I thought was very powerful.
Yeah. It's just, I know, like, what kind of permission do we need to seek, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah.
And is it more important that a story is told, period, or how it's told?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And then, yeah, who benefits, who profits? I don't know. I think one funny thing is, like, I'm like doing the thing I criticize. I'm like profiting off my family story.
Well, what did your family think of this? Were they okay with?
Oh yeah, yeah. They, I'm like thankful I have like a supportive family. Yeah, I'm trying to think. What was the feedback?
Yeah, I'm very curious.
Oh yeah, my dad called me, and he had some notes. He was like, "Why don't you explain this thing and this thing and this thing?" And I was like, "Okay, I think I do explain it." It turns out he was only a third of the way through.
Oh.
I was like, you finish the book and then like the answers are there.
Yeah.
What did my mom say? Too many sex scenes? I think there's one.
Yeah.
So we know what her ideal is. It's 0.
Yeah. It's very funny.
But no, I'm really lucky. My parents are great readers.
That's awesome.
Yeah. They also had no idea about Japanese American incarceration. So,
Really? Yeah. What was their reaction? Did they learn about it from this?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to them about it before. Yeah, I don't know. They were just surprised.
Wow.
I think a lot of people are surprised, right? Like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm just curious how many of you know about Japanese American incarceration from before reading this?
This room of smarties.
Pretty good,
Yeah.
I know. Did you learn about it in K-12?
Oh, really?
Wow, that's great.
That's cool.
Did you go to K-12 in Virginia? Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, no, it's been funny being on book tour because I grew up in Massachusetts, and in that system, like, yeah, we did like a whole year about the Holocaust, and then Japanese American incarceration like didn't come up once. I'm not saying like we have to spend a lot of time. It's like, but like we should mention it for like an afternoon, out of a year of curriculum.
Yeah.
But then I went and did some events in California, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I learned about that in middle school." And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's so strange how fractured our education system is."
Yeah, definitely.
It almost seems like state by state, we just have a different reality.
Yeah, I think that's and even by areas within the state. I mean, look at California, it's huge.
California's huge.
Virginia's pretty big, fairly big.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, I'm just worried, like, I think everything's fracturing even more.
Yeah. Where are the answers, Kevin? Tell us the answers to all. You're going to fix this, right?
No, I
That's
wrote a
what
book
this
to
talk
ask
is.
questions.
Okay, so I want to keep an eye on time, but I do want to ask just a couple more questions, and that's about some of these larger themes of belonging and assimilation. And I think we see that a lot, again, with the characters. And what does it mean to belong in a place that can be taken from you at any point? So would you kind of talk about those themes a little bit more?
Yeah, I think, I try not to, like, speak too broadly about, like, Asian Americans, because I think we're all quite different, and that's a very diverse group of people. But I do think if there's like a strange commonality, there's this like belief in the American dream, or just like work hard, make money, don't worry about anyone else kind of thing. And I don't know, I think it's just like sort of a trap that Asian Americans fall into.
Yeah.
So the characters in the book, like, they kind of believe this stuff until it's all taken away from them.
Yeah.
So yeah, thematically, that was like a big driver for me. I'm trying to think what else.
I mean, it makes me think of like Model Minority and like that dream of buying into that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think people still do buy into it.
Yeah, I think they do too. Yeah.
But yeah, so that was like a fun thing to challenge in the book. So many other things too. Yeah, there are also just like lots of tropes in Asian American literature that I'm like tired of, and I kind of wanted to break out of that too.
Do you want to tell me a little bit more about?
Yeah, I feel like in every Asian book, there's like a scene where someone is like cooking with their grandma. And I'm just like, it's so boring. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So like all the food in the book is kind of like, yeah, it's like removed from that. It's
Yeah.
like not romantic about food.
Yeah.
You know? And actually, it's like when people encounter food in the book, like they're hungry.
Yeah.
You know?
Or they're like, is a bottle of wine in the fridge?
Yeah,
That's it,
exactly,
like-
totally. So I wanted to, yeah, that's like a really specific trope I wanted to subvert. Yeah.
What about thinking about like belonging a little bit more?
Yeah, I think,
Like, especially I think of like Duncan, right? Like where he didn't quite fit, it seemed like, in his high school, and then he was in the camps and
Yeah.
felt a different sense of belonging. Or like even Dennis's character, who is very interesting character, but
yeah, I think the notion of belonging is something that like we all seek, and then it can also be like kind of dangerous.
yeah.
And that's, I think, kind of like, yeah, the point of the Duncan plot line a little bit. Like he's so narrowly focused on his football team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it ends up being kind of a problem. So, and again, I think there's also like some themes like Jen joins the Asian American Student Alliance.
Oh,
or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And again, it's just like this weird, and I feel like Asian Americans like do it to themselves sometimes. Like we just like broaden things out and we talk about it like it's a big tent, and it's, the reality is like, it's like we don't look alike. Our cultures are very different. Our food's different.
Our
our
language is different, like
Yeah.
everything.
But yeah, it's just kind of a funny balance because it's like, to create solidarity, like you want as many people in there as possible. But then what happens when you also like lose your sense of identity and what makes
Yeah.
you specific when the group is big. So
Yeah. That's another moment of like humor I really enjoyed, of like the group not knowing what to rename themselves and like fumbling
Yeah.
over like, well, we can't be AAPI anymore because that's the name of the act.
you know
Like,
what's funny? So like when I write a book, I like leave a lot of stuff in there, like for me, like little jokes, and I usually take them all out before it publishes. But the one that kind of like stayed around was calling the American Advanced Protections Initiative like AAPI,
AAPI.
which I thought was really funny.
It's very
And then as we got toward publishing, I was like, does this make any sense? Like, would the right wing like go after an acronym? And then like as the book was coming out, like Trump couldn't utter a sentence without saying DEI.
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh,
So,
yeah.
so
A little on the nose there,
I
Kevin.
know, right?
Okay, so I keep saying I have just one more question, but I do have a lot of questions, but I do want to save some time for audience Q&A. But I'm dying to know, I ask a lot of authors I interview this, we always hear about good writing advice, but I actually want to hear about terrible writing advice. I want to know what writing advice did not work for you.
Oh, that's a good hard question. Yeah. I kind of believe, well, I guess I'm about to give what I think is good writing advice, but I kind of think if you work on something book length, like you just have to finish a bad draft before it gets better. I always say like I just like puke it out.
How bad is bad though? When do you know? You just keep going?
I think you just keep going. I mean, maybe the project doesn't work, but at least you finished it. But yeah, I think the bad advice I've got is like revise while you write. And I have a friend, when she starts writing, she sits down and rereads everything she's written, like up to that point.
Wow.
And I kind of get that, but then it's like she's never going to finish this thing because now she sits down and she has to read 50,000 words
Yeah.
before she puts a new word on the page.
Dang,
I think you're never going to finish at that rate.
that's a lot of reading.
It's a lot of reading. Yeah.
Which, by the way, I know, we're all library lovers. We're here because we love to read. What books would you recommend that you read this year?
What did I read? I felt like I read a lot of, I've been reading a lot of music books, actually. David Byrne has this great book called How Music Works. It was really fun. Which I think on the side of, there's a great new book by Brian Washington called Palaver.
Yeah.
Really fun, really sharp, really mean.
I read his book before this one, Memorial.
Oh, Memorial.
Yeah,
Memorial's
yeah.
also excellent.
Yeah,
All
it's
of
a great
Brian's
book.
books are great.
Yeah.
He's actually a finalist for the National Book Awards, so I'll be rooting for him on Wednesday.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, like I said, I know that many of you read the book, and so I know that you all have some good questions. So I want to make sure I give time for some Q&A. Who's got questions?
Yes, thank you both. Before we start with questions, let's give Emma and Kevin a round of applause for a wonderful conversation. All right, thank you both. We're going to have one microphone here in the middle. You're welcome to come up and speak into it. Just form a line back this way. I will also, if you aren't able to come up, I'll be going around. My name is Jen. Just whisper my name and I'll come to you with this microphone as well.
And while people start to gather their courage for questions, I will mention too, I was chatting with Kevin just to remind folks of like the Virginia aspect of this story is there were people in Virginia that were Japanese immigrants that were sent to incarceration camps. So this is also like, you know, obviously this is a fictional book, but as we think about like the real life history crossovers, like there is a Virginia story here. And not only that, but the homestead, which is like a luxury resort, that's actually where the diplomats from DC and their families were sent after, like right after Pearl Harbor. And so like one thing that I mentioned to Kevin earlier is there's an interaction with Duncan that someone's saying like, well, would it matter if there was better water or if, you know, the weather was better, like we're still incarcerated? And it made me think of the homestead because there were a lot of people that were very critical of like, why are there Japanese Americans and Japanese diplomats at the homestead right now? But they were surrounded by sentry boxes and armed guards and all of those pieces. So I really loved that, like, again, like a nuance into there. So sorry, I was just a little extra piece.
Hi, my name is Sean. I actually work here at the library, and I'm also part of a Vietnamese American zine publishing group that was founded here in Richmond.
Cool. What's it called?
It's called Super Bloom with
Super
3
Bloom.
O's.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
Very cool.
But my question is on like when you're talking about themes of belonging and assimilation, something that like me and my group try to do is sort of critique this sort of American exceptionalism that comes out specifically in Vietnamese American communities, especially with the older generation. And sometimes, you know, we're successful and sometimes we have pushback. And so I guess like, what has been your experience with not only challenging American exceptionalism in the Vietnamese, or like I would say maybe in your family, just to keep it more localized, but also with that, like rejecting xenophobia towards Vietnam and towards Vietnamese nationals, because that's something that I kind of see in different pockets being Vietnamese American.
Sorry, you see people rejecting Vietnamese nationalism.
Yeah.
Cool.
Or just like being from Vietnam,
Yeah.
Vietnamese people who are from Vietnam who come here, like now it's 50 years after the war. So like recent Vietnamese immigrants and sort of that attitude.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spent a bit of time in Vietnam the past couple years. Actually, I was telling you, like, my Vietnamese is like okay, but the thing I learned is that like Vietnamese American Vietnamese is like frozen in time. It's like from the 70s, like when people left. So I'm in like Vietnam using like old timey slang, you know, which I think is really funny. It just like kind of broke my brain a little bit. But yeah, I think it's so easy to embody American exceptionalism because it's like what we're taught everywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's just so funny. It's like the right wing's always talking about like how great the US is, and it's like they've never been anywhere else, you know? So I think it's like you really have to have the kind of narcissism it takes to be like, this is the only good place. We are the only good people.
Yeah.
Is a little nuts to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I know I feel like I'm extra hard on Vietnamese people, but I just like want to shake them and be like, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Go look at something
Aw.
else. That's a good question.
Yeah. It's a very good question.
Can I ask two? I was raised in California, and
Where in California?
I first moved there age 10 to Monterey Park.
Monterey Park?
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
which is about 75, 90% Vietnamese. And I was about 7 miles from Santa Anita. So knowing about the internment camps was just a given. My first question is, I have known someone who evaded the camps by joining the Army. His brother and his father were put into the camps, moved to Manzanar, then to Chicago, and then eventually were relocated to Arkansas. And he never saw them again. They eventually reestablished contact. So my first question is, you constructed Duncan with a skill of compartmentalization. And I've seen this also with my father who served, very compartmentalized about his service in Vietnam. Can you expand on that?
Yeah.
And how that helped him? And then my second question is, you used the phrase a couple of times, America lost its innocence. And I'd like to know if that was tongue-in-cheek, or if you can expand on that.
Yeah, I'll start with the second one. It was tongue-in-cheek. I think, like, how many times can America, like, lose its innocence? You know, like, apparently, yeah, every year for 250 years, you know?
From the beginning.
But it's a little bit like I think the thing that drives me a little nuts is, like, whenever we say that, just like, oh, something has changed, we're going to change, we, like, know things now. And, like, nothing, at least in that avenue, ever changes. Compartmentalization. You know, it's funny. I feel like we're kind of in this, like, era where it's just like, say all your feelings, you know, like, go to therapy, like, talk about your traumas. I think it's, like, largely pretty good. I'm also just like, a little bit of repression can be kind of helpful as, like, a survival skill, you know, like, sometimes if you just keep a little bit on the inside. But I think it's just like an adaptability thing. But yeah.
Interesting.
That's a good question, though.
I'm here with my whole book group. This is our monthly meeting.
hello.
So it's nice, fun for us. So I'm curious about the tower, because there was lots of theories in the book about what it really was. So what is it, and why did you choose that as the cover?
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, I think it looks good on the cover, for one. It's like a little silly. Yeah, like the tower is kind of like a panopticon. But I actually had based it on there's a part, actually, I think it's in Virginia, the Quiet Zone. Do you guys know about this? West Virginia, okay, sorry. In West Virginia, it's a Quiet Zone. Basically, there's a huge satellite, or not satellite, telescope. And like, it's just this, like, area where they can't have any radio interference. And they can detect, like, a microwave that's, like, emitting beams or whatever. So, like, a lot of people have moved there to get away from, like, technology, and it's just kind of this, like, weird pocket of things. And I was thinking a lot about that and trying to imagine what camp would be like, you know, like in the modern day. But yeah, but I like the tower as, I mean, you know, the funny thing about the book is they live without the internet, and then they just, like, end up recreating all the textures of the internet in camp, even without technology. So I thought, like, conspiracy theories, misinformation, that would just also still spread, because rumor is, like, another thing humans do.
Yeah.
So I like having, like, the tower be, like, the focal point of that.
And just this, like, physical reminder of surveillance is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
I didn't even ask you about, like, capitalism yet, but we'll go to the other questions.
Hello, loved your book. My question has to do with a conversation that I thought was really interesting involving Duncan. So I know nothing about sports. Like, there's zero, and then, like, I'm, like, a teeny bit above, okay? But I was very engaged in all of the conversations that Duncan had as he was, like, developing his skills and practicing. And there was one conversation about Michael Vick and his inclusion in, I guess it was, like, fantasy football. And I know who Michael Vick is, right? And he's a Virginian. Like, that's a big, whew, that was a heavy hit to add. And so I wanted to ask you about including Michael Vick, like, what that meant to you, and like, how that added to the conversation, because it definitely made my ears perk up, and I was like, oh, this is getting really interesting now. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
I love Michael Vick. That's a little part of it, but so the story is that he went to prison for dogfighting.
Yep.
And listen, I don't condone dogfighting, but just, like, of all the NFL players and like a lot of the things they get up to, like that's the one we're gonna send someone to prison for. You know, like I say this as someone that watches like football, like it's kind of a problematic sport, but just like you have like concussions, you have like domestic abuse issues, you know, you like, and just like we're gonna go after the guy about the dogs, like I don't know. I just felt like it was like so unjust, but it's sort of strange. Like we somehow pull people through the mud like over animals instead of like how they treat other human beings.
Well, wasn't that there's like a famous, yeah, thank you. There's a famous activist who's Japanese American during the Vietnam War who like sent out flyers. I think it was on a campus in California. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Who basically said like we're gonna burn a dog. And like all these people showed up really upset, and he was like, you guys care more about a dog than people.
Yeah. It's also, I mean, it's just like culturally things are different. Like in Vietnam, like they eat dogs, you know, which sounds like really disgusting here, but also just like the norms are just different everywhere, you know.
First, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for this great conversation. I wanted to ask how you decided what to include, because I think, so I partly asked this because I actually work on immigration. I work with a national organization called Suru for Solidarity that actually works with survivors of the Japanese internment camps who are now speaking out about immigrant detention. And it's interesting when in working with them and as the survivors are trying to record their stories, I think there's a lot of conversation about it's so much and there are so many details, it's so overwhelming. And sort of like what do you actually want to highlight? What do you want to include that will be meaningful to today? Like what will people not know that is really important for folks to understand? So I'm curious, especially given that you're writing fiction with like historical elements, like how you decided like this is really important or this is really surprising and we really need to include these pieces of information.
Yeah, I was sort of referencing like the earlier draft was much longer and it just like had a lot more history in it. And I just ended up paring a lot of that back because I think if people want to learn about the history, like they should just go pick up a history book. And so like I think everything from history that's in this book is almost like more emotional than it is fact-based. And I think that's like a very powerful thing that fiction can do. It's like we can think of history in a slightly different dimension than just like these are the facts, you know? So that was kind of like the guiding principle for me. And then honestly, like narrative wise, you know, like I wanted this thing to move pretty quickly. So I think the Duncan football chapter is the longest one, but everything else is like under 2,000 words, 1,000 words. And yeah, kind of mechanically, I just like want you to be like in with one character and then jump to the next. And then like the tension or the gaps between them would be like a lot of where the propulsion comes from.
Have you had any like descendants or Japanese Americans talk to you about the book? Like, what have they said?
You know, I was gay.
I mean, other than me.
Yeah. I just met this wonderful woman.
Just one person.
An hour ago. No, I mean, I did actually I had an old professor, shout out to Tomiko. I had her like do a sensitivity read of it pretty early on. And, you know, I would say I was a little nervous, like, because I took a very specific Japanese American experience and I just like made it happen to Vietnamese people. And I kind of wonder if people would be like protective over that experience. But I think mostly Japanese Americans, especially like the historians and scholars, they're just excited that like there's a new book about it, you know, that references it.
I just want people to go learn the history themselves.
And draw it into the present. So, so yeah, I was worried about getting pushback, but mostly people have seemed quite excited about it. And I think actually drawing the line to the Vietnam War too is like maybe a new dimension for them too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What made you become a writer?
What made you become a writer?
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
I think I'm just not good at anything else.
Lies! You've done so much. You've done great work.
Mostly, yeah, it's like I just like staring at Google Docs all day.
Your poor eyes.
Yeah. No, I just like always loved reading, and I think a thing I love about writing is it's like really accessible. Like you don't need any fancy equipment. Like you can write things on your phone now. So I don't know, just like as an expression, as a form of art, that's just like the one I gravitated to the most.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Great question.
Yeah, that's a great question.
I really liked what you said about the book leaving people with questions, and you hope that that's what part of what people take from it. So I'm curious what questions you were left with after writing it, if any.
Sorry, what's the name of that?
I'm curious what questions you were left with after writing the book.
Besides, will Japanese Americans be mad at me?
Yeah.
No, I'm actually, I felt pretty good about where the book was, and I was so curious how, my publisher is great, but I wasn't sure if they would let me put like a Vietnamese word on the cover. I was just kind of curious what the reception would be. That's like the thing about, yeah, like making art, you like put it out in the world and you have no control over how people interpret it. So yeah, I had those lingering questions. Yeah.
Is it frustrating that, like, if you try to do a Google search, like some publishers don't have the tilde over the M?
I was like, yeah, I was warned about that. It's like not
Yeah.
in a lot of alphabets. That's fine. I don't know. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I read, so actually the advice that you get when you're an author that's good is don't read your Goodreads reviews. I read like all of them.
Oh my God.
But
It's
it's
been very good.
They're
There's
actually
been
mostly
there's
pretty
really good
positive.
ones, yeah.
But yeah, it's just so funny. Like, there was one early review that was just like, it's like, this book is too far-fetched. Like, I can't imagine the government like detaining people.
Oh my God.
And I was like, well, I don't know.
What world do they live in?
It's like, I don't know what you're reading, but
Any other questions? Oh, yeah. These are great questions.
Yeah, well done,
I don't
everybody.
even have to do anything. They're doing all the work for me. Thank you, guys.
I think one of the reasons that I raised my hand about knowing about the internment camps was because I love historical fiction. And I feel like I've learned so much about history through that, not through school at all.
Yeah.
And that was just a comment. But one question I had is, this is maybe ignorance, but I've never heard the term Viet as referred to the group of people. Was that part of the fiction, or is this how people refer to themselves?
yeah, actually, like Vietnamese people just say it all the
Okay,
time.
I just never heard that.
Yeah, yeah,
I was
yeah.
curious. Thank you.
Yes, good question.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. One of the questions that I started to get as folks were asking their own questions, and in the theme of asking questions, is I kind of want to pick your brain as far as people, you're encouraging people, right, to go out there and ask questions, how like AI has kind of caused people to turn to AI to ask these questions
Yeah.
rather than seeking out the
Yeah.
answers themselves, and just wanted to hear your thoughts maybe on that.
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really scary, you know? I think what's really strange about AI as a technology is that I feel like good tools behave consistently, you know? And AI is just, it's like totally chaotic,
Yeah.
you know? And I don't know why we've accepted this.
Yeah.
You know, like it does not bug me out when like people use AI to search things on the internet or whatever, and I think everyone knows it's like wrong 10% of the time, or maybe that's generous.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's super strange. I was reading a really great piece in the New Yorker, I think it was Hwasu, but it was about like students cheating with AI, right? Like they use it to write their essays. And there's just this great point in it where he just tells his students, he's like, this is the last time anyone has to read something you write. You know, and it's just like, oh, we're just like gonna offload all of that, you know, privilege and responsibility to like the AI. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bleak time.
And it makes me think of like AI is also algorithms.
Yeah.
And so like one of the things that you talk about is Amazon's algorithms couldn't predict people buying things
Yeah.
for the camps and stuff.
Well, it's also funny too, because I think human beings are like really good at like looking forward, and just like the way we design algorithms and AI, it's actually like retrograde, right? Like it's just based on that experience, and it just like spits it out. you
Yeah.
know?
Wow.
Thank
That's a
you.
great
Yeah.
question.
Hello. I'm also with this book club. I was really pleased to see you include something about Cuba.
Mm.
And I just got back from there 2 months ago on a mission trip, and in talking to one of the people there, she indicated how it's really been only in the last 5 to 7 years that they have really learned about what's going on in the world because they are so cut off. And I just wondered, kind of, did anything lead you to including, I mean, it was a brief part, but it was still not, I feel like Cuba is just not known to most people, and kind of what led you to
Yeah,
including that.
I visited Havana about a decade ago. So actually, yeah, a little bit before I started this. And so El Paquete in the book is like the informal analog distribution network. But yeah, when I was there, I mean, that's a real thing. And I just thought it was, because I think I was surprised when I got there. There was just like, there's internet. I think it's changed a little bit, but there's only like internet at like the embassy and certain hotels, but there's like no cell signal anywhere. So it was kind of like the most cut off I've ever felt. You know, like my phone didn't work most of the time. And then just reading about El Paquete, it's just like, oh yeah, like if we just like didn't have cell service or Wi-Fi, like what would technology look like? And it'd be like, oh, like we're passing around Game of Thrones episodes on thumb drives. I just thought something about that, like I quite liked that. So yeah, I think I just included it because I can imagine that happening in this scenario where there's, you know, no cell signal, but it's just really cool, right?
It's definitely felt very different to be
Yeah.
so cut off and not to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add, I love that you had like Jurassic Park as one of the most watched movies. Also, Babe in the Big City. I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
wow, I need to rewatch this.
That's a good movie.
It's a different lens. I
It
don't
was, like,
think I
actually
watched
given
this as a
George
kid.
Miller.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for those reminders.
This will be our last question, by the way. Thanks.
Hi, thank you for being here and thank you for writing this book.
Great pants.
Thank you so much. Overall.
Oh, okay,
Goes
great
all the way up.
overalls.
I'm wondering how you decided how badly your characters could behave and still be likable or relatable.
Ooh, good question.
That's a great question.
Yeah, actually, that's like the #1 Goodreads complaint is that the characters aren't likable, and I'm like, what year is this?
Yeah.
We're still having this debate.
Yeah.
I actually didn't think about it that way. Like, I actually think there's like no tipping point. I just wanted them to feel real. Like, even when they make selfish decisions, like the motives should be relatable, even if you yourself would not make that decision. So that was kind of the guiding principle. But it is interesting, actually, the reader feedback around Ursula. Yeah, they really don't like her.
She
thought it was,
felt the most real to me. She was like my favorite character to read about.
She was like my favorite character to write. But yeah, I was like, I actually think like the things that motivate her make a lot of sense, even if they are like, even if she does sell out her family.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people would make that choice. So yeah, it's a good question though.
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I also want to add, I love that you added, as someone who's half Japanese, I love that you had two main characters that were half Viet, and like that experience is different than being full. Did you have like, do you have family that are half, like?
Yeah.
Did you kind of know that
family
experience?
that's like a mix. But yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of friends that are half.
Yeah.
It's weird that Zoomers always say Wasian now.
Yeah, and I
don't
can't
like
get on
that.
the Wasian
Yeah.
board. Yeah.
I remember someone was like, what term would you use instead? I was like, Hapa? And they were like, that's appropriative Hawaiian
yeah,
culture. And I was like,
yeah.
okay. No winning here.
Yeah. Mixed.
Mixed, yeah.
All right. Thank you all for your wonderful questions. And thank you again to Kevin and Emma for such a great, inspiring conversation
Thanks,
today.
Kevin.
One more round of applause. And hopefully you all saw on your way in that Fountain Bookstore is upstairs if you'd like to grab a copy of the book, Me Documents, if you haven't already. I'm going to ask you all to just hang out for 1 second as Kevin and Emma make their way upstairs, and Kevin will be sitting in the main collection area for signing books. Thank you again.
Thanks, guys.